What's up, dudes and dudettes to the internet? My name's Seth. No, turn the volume down. What's up, dudes and dudettes to the internet? My name's Seth, and we are... What's up, dudes and dudettes to the internet? My name's Seth, and today we're going to be taking a look at Dark and Light, which essentially is another Ark game. As far as I've heard, this game has actually been developed by a lot of the same developers that ended up making Ark. However, the team itself on Steam is not going to end up being the same. I'm guessing that the same individuals that ended up making Ark ended up making this game, and it shows because this is pretty much the exact same game. Outside of the fact that we've got our own unique, different map, and kind of focused gameplay that's focused a little bit more on like medieval themed stuff. So we've got like griffins, dragons, which of course are in Ark, but then we also have like skeletal warriors and elementals and stuff like that that you're going to end up fighting, as well as you can kind of see in the background right there. With the divided peaks, we kind of have like these two gigantic lumbering statues that are guarding like the other area. And we got lots of random events that can end up happening as well. You can see we ended up getting very lucky where a meteor kind of set spawns over in this area. There we go, perfect timing. So that meteor that we see in the distance is going to end up crashing into the ground in a set location. And it's going to spawn a whole bunch of baddies that are going to be around it. And then you could end up going up to it and seeing this right here. So you could end up getting yourself stone, sulfur, and normally there is like another resource that would end up spawning, but it looks like this thing is slowly just dying in durability because nobody's been around to claim it, or maybe the person who owns this house ended up getting the good resources of it and then just left it alone. I don't know. So today we're going to talk about kind of the different mechanics, what you're going to be wanting to do when you're just starting out with this game, because generally it took me quite a while to end up getting to this point, but while I wanted to actually do a couple videos on this game, maybe even start a short series or even just play it in my off time a little bit and do some live streams and stuff because of the grindy nature of a game like this, Ark Aberration just came out, like the downloadable content for Ark, so I am just going to uninstall this game after I end up making this video. I may end up coming back to it in the future, but as of right now, I just wanted to show this game off because it's really, really cool. Now, another thing too that I'm going to point out that you're going to have to do as soon as possible is when you're loading up a server on this game, take a screenshot, because you can't actually favorite servers. You can favorite official servers as far as I know, but you can't favorite unofficial servers. This one is an unofficial one. It's PvE, and all the experience and stuff is 25 times normal speed. So you level up really, really fast and kind of go through the tiers really, really fast. That said, I've still put in like lots and lots of hours into just gathering the different resources and stuff like that, and leveling up my character and figuring out all the different mechanics and stuff like that. I actually did have a mount that was hanging out here, but it's been a couple days since I logged on, and the servers continuously play as you're logged out. So when I came back on today, my character was kind of starving because I have no food on him, and my mounts don't seem to be anywhere in sight, which is a little bit disappointing. We'll try and see if we can end up taming a mount today, just so that I can end up showing you how it ends up working. But most of all, I just wanted to show you just real quick like how the game ends up working. So we got all these different crafting tables that end up playing into all of the different like tiers that you can end up getting into, which I think that the progression in this game is actually better than Ark, because we've got all of this stuff. It might seem a little bit daunting at first, but don't worry, it gets really easy to understand very, very quickly. So we got survival right here. Let's just look at in the adventuring tab. So harvesting wood from trees, harvesting straw from shrubs, and crafting survival items is going to end up giving you experience to the survival tab. Then as you level it up, you can see rank 1 all the way up to rank 8 is going to end up giving you schematics for all these different resources and items, which conveniently you can actually see what they're going to end up costing, and a little description of what they're going to end up actually doing for you. So these are going to end up being recipes that you'll unlock from going through the entire tab of all of this stuff, right? So you can see there's a fireplace, which is better capacity and more durability than a campfire. However, of course, you want to put it in a house rather than just out in the wilderness. And then there's like spyglass and stuff like that, which of course takes different resources. A lot of them too as well. You can kind of see it'll say like, you can craft this at your inventory, or other things it'll say you can craft it somewhere else. There's going to end up being architecture, which is just buildings and stuff like that. Then there's going to end up being magic tiers, which you can see I haven't really ended up touching any of that stuff. There's enchanting, there's shape-shifting into the different creatures out in the world. There's a lot of different really cool mechanics to this. There's forging. which of course is making your gear better. And then you can see with this one, it's just straight up, you don't know how you actually progress this, because the resources that it ends up giving you and stuff like forging workbench or the refined square cast, which of course is a piece of metal that's going to end up taking both copper and iron, and maybe that's mithril dust, I'm not exactly sure. Refined obsidian block, which of course is from obsidian, yikes. Then there's the riding tier, which of course you're gonna end up getting different saddles and stuff as you end up progressing this, etc., so on and so forth as you end up going into all of that stuff. So I'll kind of get you started with explaining how you end up actually getting all the different resources and where you get them. And then maybe we'll end up going and taming a creature, and then we'll just end up calling it a day. But one of the big things that you're gonna want to work towards at the beginning of the game is the revival altar. This is gonna essentially end up being your spawn point, and you can also use it to end up teleporting to different nodes that are around the map as well. So we could end up teleporting to different town centers and stuff, but I don't want to necessarily do that, because then we would have to try and get back, which is a little bit confusing. Now, the game also does have focus right here. I just want to point this out. This is slowly going to deplete as you don't sleep. So that's where beds end up coming into play as far as the stats are concerned. So you just end up going up to a bed, you just sleep in it as so, and then bam, you just end up gaining all your focus back. It doesn't actually pass time, obviously, because everybody on the server would then end up being affected by that, so that just obviously doesn't work. Similarly to Ark, almost all of the things in the game, like all of the crafting benches, actually require fuel of sorts. So for the furnace, for example, you have to actually turn it on with logs you put inside it in order to actually even forge metal and ingots in the first place. And then, for example, there's going to end up being this right here, which is the curing rack, which ends up setting up like meat that's not going to end up expiring very quickly. Like you can see, this spoils in like what is that, 17 days or something like that, 16 weeks maybe, or months, I'm not exactly sure, but either way it's a lot. And you end up using the sulfur powder to fuel this. I felt that that was relevant to say, because for the life of me I couldn't figure out what resource we actually needed for that. There's going to be a mortar and pestle for crafting that sulfur, which of course sulfur you end up actually just getting out of rocks when you end up hitting it with a pick. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But then there's going to be this thing right here, which is just essentially an advanced millstone is going to be a more efficient mortar and pestle. So in a lot of ways you can end up upgrading your tables to the new one, and then you don't really gotta worry about it. And then there's gonna be the workbench itself. This is gonna have like different structures, different weapons and shields and stuff like that, as you can see. And you put all of the crafting components that are required for the item into the crafting table so that you can end up actually getting it. And one thing that I think is great is you can see right here, well, there's this little picture right here that just kind of gives, you know, like, what's this right here, for example? You might be sitting there thinking, what is that resource? So you hover over it and it says right there, quartz sand. That I think is absolutely fantastic, because it actually took away a lot of the confusion in the game, because otherwise I was having a hard time trying to figure out, like I usually have a hard time figuring out, like, based on the icon, what is this resource and where do I actually get it? But now that you can actually see quartz sand, you could go and look it up on the wiki, but generally it's going to be easy because this is the starting gear and it's just going to end up being right here and going to end up taking stone. So one thing, if you've never played Ark before, which again, like Ark is pretty much the exact same game but with dinosaurs instead, is that all of the different crafting tools are going to end up having different functionalities depending on what you end up using them on. So for example, when you're harvesting fur off of creatures, especially wild sheep, they give the most fur, you're going to end up using a sickle or a scythe that you end up crafting. As far as I can tell, I don't think that there's a higher tier of the sickle, but that's okay. The game does a really good job. You can see at the bottom middle of the screen as well, it says harvest, but if we end up swapping to our axe, it says use tools, and it's showing a, you know, it's showing a picture that says we can't use this tool to harvest this plant. So it's like very specific tools that are going to end up being used for the job, right? I don't know if there's a first person mode either, by the way. And then this is going to end up being somebody's house right over here. And we'll end up exploring the town in a little bit as well, because that's one thing that they have over Ark, which I think is fantastic, is there's going to be NPC spawns and villages and stuff like that. So this actually, I think, is a player made house, which you can see looks a lot better than mine did. Like, seriously, that actually looks really, really cool. I like the fact that it's just kind of a small little house, and the fact that you can chop down all the different trees and stuff like that and gather all the resources. A pickaxe is going to yield different resources from a tree than an axe is going to do, and etc., etc. So we got this longhorn right here, right? I had a longhorn. I guess he's dead because I didn't feed him in time or something like that. Whatever. But the problem is that I ended up losing my saddle that I ended up making for him. So hopefully I'll be able to make another saddle for this guy right here. I do want to show you how the taming ends up working. And then I'm going to show you there's a little town that we actually have up here before it ends up getting way too dark in the night, because it does end up getting pretty dark. But the taming is going to be very similar to Ark, whereas what you would end up doing with Ark is you're trying to build up the creature's torpor, which is going to be like its fatigue, right? So as you end up grinding it up, hello other player, as you end up grinding up the torp, it's going to end up knocking the creature out. And whereas in Ark, you knock the creature out and then you just put food in its inventory, with this game, you actually have to make a trough. So let me just see right here. I can just craft one right here. There is a metal trough, which of course is going to end up being required for some of the bigger creatures in the game. That's just going to throw that into our inventory right here. So I'm going to throw it onto my hotbar. He seems to just be attacking the longhorn, so I guess we'll end up going for a different creature because it doesn't really matter. But you're going to end up getting various meats off of those creatures and different resources and stuff like that. They have lots of really cool, as I said with the meteor, there's lots of really cool random events. You can actually find goblins that will randomly come out of nowhere, and they start punching you, which builds up your torp, and then it knocks you out, and they'll take all your stuff. Thankfully, they're kind of stupid and will just kind of hang around a given area so that you can end up getting it back. But potentially it does mean another player could end up just destroying them, and I'm pretty sure they could end up just taking your stuff. Now you can see right here, sorry that it's so dark, but this is going to end up kind of being an area where these are all NPCs. So if any enemies end up coming into this area, they're going to end up getting just obliterated by most of these guards. So you can kind of rely on the guards for the most part in that. They'll end up actually protecting the area. But in a lot of ways, they also are kind of glitchy and won't end up attacking most of the enemies and stuff like that. I'm going to head on over to the town I'm at here just because it is starting to get too dark. But I did want to show you that you can actually buy horses. I thought that that was really, really cool that there is actually NPCs and shops in this game, because you can end up buying horses, you can buy gear, like legendary gear as well. Like that's the thing that's really neat, is you can actually end up going to a store and maybe you'll see a broadsword that you're wondering, why is this so expensive? It's because it's actually a very, very rare legendary tier that you can only buy for a limited time before the stock of the shop ends up cycling over to a new set of items, right? So that horse is obviously pretty expensive based on its level, and then this one's going to end up being a lower price, and then this one's level 32 and it's 255. I'm just gonna buy this one just for the sake of saving my money, because I'm trying to get myself a broadsword, or at least I was trying to get myself a broadsword. The other thing too that you gotta keep in mind with servers like this, where you level up so quickly, is that you're going to end up being able to increase your weight capacity like really, really high, really, really quick. And because of it, a lot of the mounts that you'll end up being on might not necessarily be able to carry you if you're carrying like 5,000 wood and stuff like that. And then another thing too that I thought was really interesting is in Ark, if your pet ends up dying, that's it, it's dead forever. Whereas in this game, like in Ark, you can end up using mods to revive your pets, whereas this game actually has vanilla ways, like in the game. Like that right up there is actually a resurrection pool where you have to get a soul gem or something, I'm not sure what it's actually called. You bind that to your creature. So if I ended up having one in my inventory right now, I could tell it to take this creature right here that I have. And then if it ended up dying, I would throw that into the soul pit right here, and then it would end up reviving that pet. Now, there's a couple things that end up coming into play as far as I know the stats, if not the level of the pet. Like, I think that the level of your pet ends up staying, but the stats kind of randomize a little bit. So it's not like you're just resurrecting your pet verbatim to exactly what you just had 2 seconds ago. It is going to end up changing in stats, right? And of course, you're going to be able to have all sorts of things that you can end up taming, either as just allies that are going to be able to help you out in the world. There's flying creatures like griffins and giant bats and stuff like that that you can end up having. There's also a whole bunch of just dungeons in general and underground areas and stuff. And as you end up forming a guild or a tribe, very similar to Ark, you can actually end up renting these houses that are right here in the beginning portion of the town. So it's really, really cool that they have these mechanics. Like, I think that it's great that you can actually have gold and you could go out and grind resources. Then you could come back to town and start selling those resources so that you end up generating more currency, right? So last but not least, why is that guard attacking my horse? Why do they always attack my horse every time I come to town, dude? Like, seriously, I don't understand why they do that. Let me see if I can end up just shouting him to being silent and not actually attacking. Okay, let's get out of here. I'm gonna hide my horse over here because for some reason they always just attack them. I don't know why. Maybe because they count it as a mob, like a creature, and then they just have a hard time with it. There's also going to be this right here, which is the billboard. I don't know whether or not this has to do with like questing and stuff like that. Maybe it does. Maybe there's like quests that you can end up accepting. The town itself is going to end up having beds and a bunch of other different items as well that you can end up using, but you're going to need gold for it. And at first, at the beginning of the game, you can just smash these bales to get your gold. Depending on the server you're on, of course, you're going to end up getting a lot less gold for your buck because of the fact that this is 25 times resources and XP and everything like that. So if we end up talking to this guy, you can see he's got all these different items, which you can see, craftable iron axe. I can craft that right now, you know, because I'm a high enough tier. But then if we end up going down to some of these other items, the craftable iron tip spear, for example, I don't even know where you end up crafting that. It's in a higher tier than I can end up getting to. And then here's like the two-handed greatsword. Here's like a really strong and uncommon two-handed greatsword. So you can see it's sold out. Somebody actually ended up buying it right away. But you can end up selling all your resources and stuff like that. And a lot of what ends up coming into play is I'm pretty sure the merchants themselves only have a set amount of gold in order to end up actually buying items from you. You can donate to them, which is going to end up giving them increased stock and stuff like that. I don't know whether that affects all players or if it just affects you. But anyways, there's an inn and stuff like that, so you can kind of just explore the town at your leisure. You can go up to the castle, but I'm not sure whether or not you end up actually getting attacked up there or anything, so I've never really ended up doing it. Now, last but not least, I'm just going to show you the ore, because I thought that was a little bit confusing at first in where you end up actually getting it. Oh my gosh, this game is like so broken and crazy. I don't know whether or not that was another guard that was hanging out down there, the one that's trying to shoot me right now, or is that another player? Seriously, the rubber banding is insane. So down in that pit, for example, there's water elementals that'll just wreck your face. You can go out right in front and there'll be all sorts of crazy creatures that'll end up destroying your face as well. You can also choose different factions for your starting area, so you can end up choosing humans, which is what I've got right now. You can end up choosing elves, which as far as I've heard is very difficult because you end up getting wrecked by griffins a lot. And then there's going to end up being dwarves as well. So again, you can kind of just choose which one you want to personally play with. Every now and then I've seen like crazy, really big monsters spawn right outside of town right here, which means that I've kind of been reliant on stronger players to come out and wreck them, because otherwise I'm like a little bit too weak. But you can kind of see over there, this is another prime example where there's just a whole pack of, whoopsie daisy, what's going on right here? Did the game crash? No, it didn't. Good. We got all sorts of crazy creatures going in the environment right here, because is that my creature? Was that my longhorn? That might have actually been my longhorn, dude. I don't know. It could have been, but these stupid wolves just ended up wrecking its face. So let me just show you a little bit of the combat here, as I most likely am going to end up dying. Oh, never mind. I'm like strong enough with this hammer right here, but I'm probably going to end up losing my horse, unfortunately, which is too bad. I think you can actually cause damage to your own creatures too, which is a little bit disappointing. So you kind of got to watch out for that. I don't know whether we can or not. What is its health at? Its health is at 1936. So if I end up hitting him, does that actually cause damage to him? No, it didn't. Okay. I thought that it did because of something else that I ended up running into at another point. So we could end up going through all the inventories right here and trying to find that saddle and items that it ended up getting eaten. But as we have our horse kind of in the area, he's actually gaining experience as well. So that's how you end up leveling your creatures, is you kind of carry them around and do stuff. But there was somebody's house that was down here, which I guess they didn't log in time, and it ended up slowly getting eaten by these stupid wolves and stuff. And then there's these creatures right here, which you can tame them as well. I'm going to show you what the taming is like, but I'm not necessarily going to end up actually getting these guys. Well, maybe I can get him because he's only level 16. So you tag him with a rope arrow, and then you end up left-clicking again to place the rope on the ground. And that's just going to end up building up his tort meter just passively for every arrow that you end up actually shooting into them, right? So you kind of gotta watch out for some of the stronger enemies, which are, of course, going to end up taking a lot longer to end up building up their torp. Also, I'm going to try and see if I can end up getting rid of this stronger one right here, because I don't want him to start getting in the way while I'm actually fighting this other dude. See, we got our air creature over there in the distance, which would cause lots of trouble for me if I wasn't like being so careful of it. I'm trying to be careful not to kill the level 16 one. Whoopsie daisy. Well, anyways, it looks like I'm going to end up dead, and there goes all of my items. So anyways, who cares? I wasn't really paying attention of any of that. I was just trying to show you all that. It doesn't really matter, because I'm going to end up just uninstalling this game anyways. It's very, very difficult. Like, it's a cool game. It's just very, very difficult, so you kind of got to keep that in mind as you're playing it. You can end up spawning. You can see I can respawn at my altar, or we can spawn at the downtown district and stuff like that. I don't know why it's not there. Respawn at Central Square, or you can end up creating a new character and then just spawning in a different area if you feel so inclined. You can make your character look pretty ridiculous as well. Like, I just made him look ghastly. As opposed to most of the Ark characters you're gonna find out in the world usually end up just having more standard generic generic design, not creature design. But either way, now I would have to go back and end up getting all my tools and stuff like that, which kind of out of gaming, I have a habit where I want to go back and get it. I have tamed one of those lizard creatures before, and I was just about to make the saddle, and then a wolf ended up coming into my base as I was crafting it. The wolf warped under the map, but it was still damaging my creatures, but they couldn't attack it back, so they ended up dying. So just as a final farewell before we end up calling this video, I do want to say that there are a lot of bugs. This game has had quite a few updates, and while it does have mixed reviews on Steam, a lot of those updates that people were complaining about have actually been fixed, because people were talking about like various crashes and stuff like that. And the world itself is very expansive and very beautiful, and there's a lot of planned content, but we'll see what ends up happening with it, because a lot of Ark streamers and Let's Players and stuff like that ended up actually coming to this game when it first came out a little while ago. And then they ended up exploring all of the content, and then they swapped back to Ark, very similarly to how I'm going to go back to Ark, just because the downloadable content is out now as well, which probably has already been on my channel by the time this video shows up. But in either case, thank you so much for watching. Very much appreciate it. Links will be in the description for everything about this game. Don't forget to like, share, favorite, and subscribe for more daily content. That's also going to build up loyalty points to my merch store. Links are in the description for that, where you can buy this shirt and a bunch of other stuff. And for the fans that want to go the extra mile and donate to me for absolutely free, you can check the links in the description and donate to me with Gawkbox, and it'll end up explaining a little bit more about that. In either case, sign over and stay epic, everybody.